If you're a person looking for a job and you have not been successful so far, and you're really frustrated, not understanding why you're not getting no response or even interviews, then in this video, I'll be going over some of the things that you need to focus on, especially your resume, because your resume is your brand. And I'll be going through some of the key points to include in your resume and how to articulate certain things so that your resume is your brand. And when the hiring manager sees your resume, it doesn't get sidelined, it actually gets selected. So therefore, creating a possibility for you to get an interview. So let's go through some of the things that you need to be aware of in this video. In this video, I'll be going through some of the common frustrations that a job seeker may finding it difficult to penetrate into a job market, especially if you're entry level or someone with less than 3 years experience, which is like intermediate level, but you're finding it very difficult to actually get an interview or response. This resume, how can you make it as your personal brand? I'll be going through that and highlighting some of the keywords to include in that to make sure that your resume is articulated in such a way that it represents you. So some of the key sections of the resume we'll be going through is professional summary, skills, competencies, experience, education, certifications. These are key areas to have included in your resume. And also I'll be showing you what is a good resume versus a bad resume so that you know when you see that, you'll be able to make a judgment call for your resume and see if your resume is falling in the good resume side or the bad resume side. Also within your resume, you want to be able to tell a story. So your resume is not about just keywords and without having anything that describes your achievement. I'll be telling you how you can add storytelling to your resume so that the hiring manager can see your experience connected to how you added the value in that organization. And some of the most important part is the last one, ATS optimization. Everybody knows, some people don't know, that every hiring manager, every organization use a system called ATS, which looks for keywords in your resume. If it doesn't find it, your resume doesn't get selected. So I'll be going through that, giving you an idea what to include in your resume. So let's get cracking on the first thing. So when I ask the question, what are some of the common frustrations, you might find that people will say, well, I have a resume. I've been applying for so many jobs, but every time I apply, I don't get no response. I try to follow up with the hiring manager. I try to send a message. I'm looking on LinkedIn. I'm looking on Indeed.ca, but I'm not really getting no response. So I'm getting a little bit tired now. I'm not sure that I will be able to get an interview. Maybe I'm not good enough. So these are some of the common frustrations that a person may have, and I empathize with that because right now the job market for a Scrum Master, for example, is pretty saturated. There are many people, especially at the COVID period, a lot of people got certified in Scrum Master certification, CSM, PSM. And as a result, you've got a lot of people with the certification and they're applying for the same Scrum Master job as you are. So how can you make your resume different? How can you make your resume stand out? How can you be ahead of the pack? Let's go through this video to help you with that. Your resume is your brand. That's the key thing to remember. Your resume has to illustrate your brand, i.e. who you are, what kind of experience you have, and what are some of the strengths that you possess. Your soft skills. How do you come across as a Scrum Master? How do you communicate with your team? How do you motivate your team? These are some of the things that you need to highlight in your resume. Your resume is not just a hardcore bullet point. Your resume has to really say, if I look at this resume, does this represent you? Is your brand the way it should be? If it doesn't represent you the way it should be, if it doesn't come across as your brand, you need to focus on that. If your resume isn't giving you that, it doesn't stand out, then that's the reason why you're getting frustrated, why you're getting no response, why you're getting no interview. So you need to remember that your resume is your brand. So therefore, make sure that it depicts exactly what you stand for. That is your brand. So let's build the resume to what I think is important sections within the resume to include. Your resume has to be well formatted. That's the key. A resume, just imagine a hiring manager receives 30, 40, sometimes 100 resumes. How on earth are they going to sift through hundreds of resumes Every resume looks the same. Everyone says, I'm a Scrum Master, I have this many years of experience, and they all look very good. So how does the hiring manager make a decision to say this resume is good versus that resume? So the first thing is your resume has to be kind to the eye, easy to read, and something that the hiring manager will see in the first 10, 15 seconds that will make them put your resume on the side to say, I will come back to this, as opposed to, I'm not interested, so therefore it gets eliminated. So these are the 4 key sections that you should have in your resume: a professional summary, a skills and competencies, experience, education, and certifications. And I'll be going through these 4 sections in more details in the following slides. For your professional summary, after your name and your designations, CSM, PSM, you want to put down your kind of email, telephone number, etc., and your LinkedIn profile link as well. You want to have a professional summary. A professional summary is a quick way of a hiring manager to look at that summarizes your professional experience. And that captures your essence of your identity, who you are, how you come across, what have you achieved for the other organizations, and what value you brought to them. So this is a very important section for the resume. It's when a hiring manager does not have time to look at the whole resume. They only have a couple of seconds or 30 seconds or 1 minute. They will look at this summary and make a judgment call to say, yep, I want to come back to this person after I've sifted through all the resumes. So it's important that you summarize in this section who you are, your identity, and what value you have brought in the past. Under the skills and competencies, you want to highlight some of the critical skills, and how effectively you present them is important. So for example, if an organization says looking for a Scrum Master or looking for a coach who can help understand the traditional waterfall and agile methodologies, you know straight away that the company or the organization is still not 100% agile compliant. They are still transitioning into agile. So they're looking for someone who can handhold them and move them into the agile from traditional waterfall. That means process needs to be updated. Some thinking mindset has to be changed. So it's important that you highlight, when you see the job description that mentions 2 methodologies, for traditional agile, you highlight some of these things to say, I have done that, I understand it very well, and I helped other organizations transition into agile environment. Under the experience, you want to mention your latest experience at the top. And then you want to put it in a chronological order. That means the latest first with the start date and no end date, but just saying present. And then you want to put the previous experience underneath that. You want to make sure that you use bullet point format. If you put sentences, paragraph after paragraph, people don't actually read that. It gets a little bit boring for them. A bullet point is a very effective way to see the bullets, and in a very simple way they can see what you have achieved. So it's important that you use bullet points when you're talking about experience, which is in chronological order. You have to make sure the format is also the same. That means your date format has to be same for all other dates that you have on your resume. You cannot have mix and match of the date format. Things like that, and the alignment of these is important. Under the education certification, you want to mention all your education that you got. You could have a history degree, doesn't matter, but you've been working as a Scrum Master or as a project manager. You want to say that after doing that, I got my certification in PMP or CSM or PSM. You want to mention all these things and say why you did that. That's because you were keeping up with IT trends. You moved into agile environments, agile projects, agile roles, like a Scrum Master. So therefore you thought being a certified Scrum Master was important. It was important to have, for example, SAFe, which is Scale Agile Framework Scrum Master, because an organization were using like an enterprise Scrum. So all these things are important, and it just shows the hiring manager that you have been keeping up with your designation, so that you are always qualified and professional in every certification. So here you can see a good resume on the left versus a bad resume on the right. So in this video, I will give you a template that will look like this on the left that you can change for yourself. But on the right hand side, just to illustrate how a good resume versus a bad resume looks like. So let me go through in more details what does this resume on the right, why is it bad, and what to look out for if you have it in your resume. So this resume on the right, it has a narrow page margins. You need to make sure that you have an inch all the way around. There's, if you have to go into 2 pages, no worries. As long as your resume doesn't go into 7, 8 pages, that's too long. I myself always make sure that it is within 4 pages. So if they're printing on double side, it's still 2 pages. So you want to make sure that you don't go beyond 4 pages if you have so much experience. And if you want to shorten it, just put down the date and what you were doing for which company, and no description any of that. If it's in the past, like 10, 15 years ago, you don't need to make it elaborate. But you can see here the margins are narrow. The copy paste text has got different font, so you wanna keep an eye on that. And a lot of times, as a hiring manager, when I was recruiting, I would see this in resumes, and I know that this person had just pasted a bullet point from another resume or another page, and I know that doesn't represent them. So you want to make sure you don't make that mistake. Things like here, qualifications, colon is missing, whereas over here you got experience, colon. You want to make it consistent. You want to make sure that the date format doesn't say January 20 - nothing, just say present. Over here, you're using just a year, not the month, which you should do that. And here you're using a different format again. You want to make sure that the date format doesn't change. It has to be consistent. And you want to make sure that the date is also aligned. If you tab across, it should be aligned as on the side. You want to make sure that the tenses are also correct. For example, if this is current, you can't be in the past. It has to be current. So, facilitating, I'm managing, as opposed to something in the past. Yeah, here you got the tenses wrong. Instead of saying led team of developers, you're saying I'm leading team of developers. So it is important that when the job is in the past, you want to change the tenses to the past. And if it's current, you want to make sure that the tenses are also current. You want to make sure that there are no spelling mistakes, and you want to make sure that the bullet points are consistent. If you're using here like circles, make sure you don't use ticks and arrows. It just makes it difficult to read and difficult for the person to understand what's going on. It's just too much. And this is what I mean by a bad resume. It's not easy for the eye to read and make a quick call to say if it's a good or a bad. Okay, so it's very important to keep an eye on these points on the left here when you have your resume. So what do I mean by having a storytelling in your resume? So tell a story by connecting the experience with the value delivered. What I mean by that is his example. I'll just move this here. Upon joining the project, I quickly realized that the Scrum team had very little knowledge on Scrum and Agile, so focused on this gap before proceeding to make the team work in an optimized manner. Meaning, I was told make this team work really effective in an optimized manner. But when I realized the team was struggling to understand ABC of Scrum or Agile, I did the basics first, make sure that they understood what is Scrum framework, why do we have these Scrum events, what is the purpose of these. So I started there. That's what I mean by having in your job description that you do this kind of stuff to say, I make a connection. I do the training needs analysis in the beginning, and I took it from that point, not what they told me to do. Because if you just took their word, you'll be trying to make the team optimize, only to realize that they don't know why they are doing a sprint kind of planning. You don't know why they need to attend the daily Scrum. So you want to make sure that you have a finger on the pulse regarding the project team, the Scrum team, and you do that. So by telling a storytelling, you're making sure that you are able to tell that in your resume to say that I'm not somebody who just follows textbook based. I'm actually someone who's experienced. I look at the situation and I adapt accordingly. So what do we mean by ATS resume parser? It is a system that is used for many, many years. People are aware of it right now. So if your resume hasn't got the keywords that they're looking for, so for example, if the job description is for Scrum Master, they're looking for keywords: daily Scrum, Scrum events, conflict resolution, facilitating, working with product owner. These are keywords. So if your resume doesn't have these keywords, it will pass all the resumes electronically, and if it doesn't find any of these words or 50% of the words, it puts into rejected bucket, and if it finds the words that they're looking for, it goes into selected bucket. Now what does that mean? the hiring manager will only look at the selected bucket of resumes and not the rejected. So if you don't have the keywords in your resume, then your resume could be sitting in the rejected bucket and you will never get a call. So you need to ask yourself, is that the reason why I have all these frustrations, which I mentioned earlier? Is that the reason why I don't have a call from anyone? Because my resume gets parsed by this ATS and it gets rejected. So you want to make sure that one, it has the keywords, two, the format looks good. So this is something important to remember, that you need to look at what are the keywords, and you can Google this ATS for a particular job that you're looking for so that you include those keywords. My tip here is look at the job description and try to customize it, your resume, to that. So if there's a Scrum Master who has worked with the product owner, you need to mention that I have worked with product owner where I work closely to make sure that we were prioritizing the backlog and planning for the next sprint. They might say, conflict resolution. You want to say, I work with a team who were a little bit disconnected. I make sure they work as one team. And by that, I mean having these kind of open workshops where I go over the basics of Scrum. So you want to mention examples, and you should be able to do that. And that's what they're looking for is your experience, not textbook based. Just to summarize what we have talked about, it can be challenging when looking for a job, as the job market may be saturated. So you feel that you don't have enough experience, and other people do. So that is something you need to accept. That's a fact. So you just need to remember that I'm up against sometimes stallions, but I just need to continue, because there'll be one person who's looking for my kind, like looking for me, because I just fit that category exactly. Remember, your job description that they're asking may not be 100%. It's the person that you are, your soft skills, the way you speak, the way you come across, that what takes over the hiring manager when they come to the crunch, whether to select you versus another person. So your soft skills, how you present yourself, is important. Remember to spend time on your resume as it is your brand. That's key. This is most important. It is your brand. If it doesn't reflect your brand, you need to work on your resume, and you do that. And that's the best. That's the first part of your challenge. When building a resume, make sure to use sections outlined in this course, which is important. Use bullet point format where possible, because it makes it clear, easy for the eye to read. Review your resume to make sure it has correct format, making sure that there are no spelling mistakes, alignment is there. Try to connect your experience with your value in the format of storytelling, as we have a give example. Every hiring manager uses ATS system to pass resumes. Remember to add those keywords in your resume so that this ATS system does not reject your resume, so therefore you don't get a call. So you want to make sure that you're always selected. And after that, when the interview comes, we'll do another video where we talk about how to ace your interviews once you get past the resume being the way it should be. Then the next video I'll do is to now connect this resume. Now you got your first interview. How can you ace that? So I'll be doing that soon. Until then, hope this helped you, and thank you so much.